and I'll kind of cover up the back reed with my finger and ask myself the question, does that look like it's in the ballpark of being finished? And if the answer is yes, then I will go and scrape the back. And the reasoning is by delaying putting the back in, I have much more control over the pitch level of my reed. I think a lot of young oboe players in particular struggle with flatness in their reeds because when we scrape out of the back, that makes the tone darker and yummier and cushier. So we all want that nice, beautiful sound, but it can be hard to balance pitch stability and depth of tone. So if you delay putting the back in, it just gives you a little bit more control over that aspect.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Thank you for sharing the recipe. I feel like I'm listening to like a gourmet chef prepare dinner. That sounds great. That sounds delicious. I want one of those.
Sounds delicious.
Yes. I might not have had a full dinner. It's possible. Here's a bit of a philosophical question. Mm-hmm. If you could go back in time, because you talked a little about younger students, do you have any read advice you'd give to a younger version of yourself, whether it be a high school version or a college version or a younger professional, anything that you've learned in the past years that you wish you could have known sooner?
Don't scrape for tone, scrape for function.
Yes.
Yeah. I think those three priorities of first get the response, then get the pitch, then get the tone. That's really important and can't be overstated enough. So don't be tempted to go the way of the flat, pretty tone.
Yes.
Very, very good advice. I actually have that written in front of me on my read desk because I'm that simple-minded, I think.
Oh,
I need the constant reminder. I need the constant reminder. It's just temptation is always there somehow.
It's very tempting.
It is.
Yeah. To just try to muscle that read that, ends up sounding really good, but it's going to fail you down the road somewhere. Mm-hmm. Well, I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the dun, 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 audition process. And in regards to reads and read preparation, how do you go about preparing reads so that you feel confident going into an audition?
Well, it's really similar to what I was talking about, like just preparing for a concert or a recording session. I think I want to have options and I want to know my reads really, really well. Mm-hmm. I'm actually remembering something that Linda Stroman told us at the Interlochen Oboe Institute in 2005, back when I was in high school. But I remember her telling us that it's more important to know your reed than to have a good reed. Because what is good in the end, right? Like you could be playing on the best, most responsive up-to-pitch reed in the world, but if you don't really know it, and if you aren't used to how it responds, that reed isn't going to mean very much to you. Just feeling as though whatever reed I choose for that audition, feeling as though I can trust that what will come out of the instrument is exactly what I intend.
Right. Do you save reeds for different rounds in the audition?
Not really. I kind of just, I guess I would choose whichever reed feels the most comfortable that day. I do try to, whether it's for an audition, concert, or anything, I try to narrow down my reed choices before the day of the event. The week before, I have a pretty good sense of this is reed 1, 2, and 3. And if I feel like those choices are pretty locked in about a week ahead of time or half a week ahead of time, then I'll feel much more confident going into whatever it is I have coming up.
In your very illustrious career, you've had the privilege of playing in several major symphony orchestras in the United States. And you've held the position as second oboist in the Cleveland Orchestra, and you currently play principal oboe in the Seattle Symphony. Can you share how or if you approach the reeds differently for each position and share some insights into your process?
Sure. That's a question I get a lot. And it's always an interesting thing for me to think about, because when I started my job in Cleveland playing second oboe full time, I didn't really deliberately think, okay, I have to do all of this to my reeds to adapt. It was more the playing and the demands of the music just informed the type of reed that I ended up making. And I think it was the same thing then transitioning from full-time second oboe to full-time principal oboe. I didn't come into Seattle thinking, well, I have to play on a wider shape and I have to play on harder reeds or whatever. I realized, I need to be pumping out more sound than I am now. And I think my reeds, they just naturally evolved to this place of being more projecting and with a wider dynamic range than before. In terms of specific things in my reeds that evolved, I think I play on reeds that are more open now than I did 7 years ago when I was in Cleveland, or 10 years ago even when I was in school. And I think I also play on reeds that are more vibrant. Like the whole reed is really vibrating when I'm playing. That's pretty essential for a principal oboe chair, to have something that really lets you blow into it, but that's vibrant and responsive enough and light enough that you can disappear into the texture when the flute player has a solo, for instance.
Does that larger opening give you what some people call good resistance, or does that just allow you to get the projection and resonance that you're going for the principal oboe?
For me, it's more about the projection and the resonance and being able to put a larger volume of air and faster moving air through the oboe. So I don't have as much back pressure, I guess. That's the result. Yeah, I think that good resistance, that's a really interesting thing, to think about, because it's true. Like, I know exactly what you mean when you say good resistance, but it's a bit of an elusive concept.
So how do you keep a full reed box with your busy performance schedule?
Out of necessity. I mean, work's going to be pretty miserable if I don't have lots of options to play on. I tend to make reeds late at night, shortly before I go to bed. That seems to be a pretty good time for me. And then I can listen to a podcast or like watch a TV show and kind of relax at the same time, if that's even possible. When you're making reeds. But if it's become kind of part of a wind down process for me, which is a little bit of a paradox. But I also notice now versus when I was in school, now I tend to make reeds in shorter spurts. So I don't really have the luxury typically of like an entire afternoon where I have nothing to do and I can spend the entire afternoon working on reads. I have a half hour before I have to leave for rehearsal, or I have an hour in between students or something. And so I'll make use of those short spurts of time. And like if I have a gouged piece of cane and I only have a half hour, I can make a blank from soaking that for 20 minutes and then quickly tying a blank. So that tends to work well for me if I have just a small window of time.
That's interesting that you say you work on reads at night, because I do understand that Joe Robinson would do that. He would come home from a long day of rehearsing with the New York Philharmonic and make 6 reads before he went to bed. So
wow.
You're in good company. Well, Mary Lynch, thank you so much for being a guest on Read Talk today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was nice to chat with you guys.
Oh, it was very fun. And thanks to all of you for listening. Please subscribe to our podcast and check us out on Facebook. Sending good vibes from our read desk to yours.
Join us next time for Read Talk.